Hello and welcome to semifinal coverage here at Grand Prix Atlanta. Brian and Eduardo here along for the ride with you. There you see Christopher Larson on your left. I can tell you Christopher Larson was watching over here by the booth as that quarterfinal was playing out, and as soon as Canister reached for those basic lands so he could start tracking his mana, Chris was like, oh, I gotta go. I gotta get ready for my semifinal. Means we're gonna start playing soon. Not as soon as he thought, but pretty soon.
Yeah.
So Arcbound Worker is the leadoff there for Christopher Larson. Pian Zhang had a Aether Vial.
Yeah. Worth noting, the key mana point for Christopher is really that turn 2 and turn 3 with a Mox Opal. A lot of powerful 2-mana plays, but not so many ones. Turn 1, if you don't have Hardened Scales, you can go for Ancient Stirrings or Arcbound Worker, but these are kind of weak setup plays. It's really on turn 2 that the deck starts going out of the gates, and from there it just cascades on and on and on. And that Ingloff Nexus looks innocent, but is anything but. A little less important in this matchup, just because there's a lot of flyers in front. But yeah, this star already.
Wow, there you see the explosive power of the deck: a Steel Overseer, a Mox Opal, and a second Arcbound Worker.
Yeah, and I mean, there are Reflector Mages, which is an interesting inclusion. Banned Spirits doesn't usually run Reflector Mage, but Zhang decided, you know what, I just want a board-centric card. Actually, that may be what we see here.
I was just going to say.
Returning Steel Overseer for 2 turns like this is a huge tempo boost.
Yeah, bounces the Steel Overseer back to Christopher Larson's hand. It's going to keep both of those Arcbound Workers at bay.
Yeah, I mean, if Christopher doesn't have too much action, you can attack it and pintle even one of the workers. But with access to 4 mana, I think we're going to just see 2 cards being played here.
Plays a Hangerback Walker. Plays another Hangerback Walker. Wow.
That is a lot of +1/+1 counters. Imagine if it was turn 1 Hardened Skills. This would be...
Oh, yeah. You see how disgusting this would be.
Yeah, Hangerback Walker... now, the thing is, Zhang has to put actually quite a bit of pressure because the more time passes, the more likely it is that these Hangerback Walkers get counters from something like a Steel Overseer coming back or an Arcbound Ravager. Oh, wow. This is... Yeah, quite a nice sequence.
Aether Vial on 2 puts a Phantasmal Image into play. It becomes a copy of Reflector Mage, and it bounces one of those Hangerback Walkers, which is going to keep it, again, at bay for a turn in Christopher Larson's hand.
By the way, one of the best possible cards in this matchup, Spell Queller. All these XX creatures don't exactly interact well into a Spell Queller, except if you're saying, then they interact perfectly. Essentially turning Spell Queller into counter-target XX spell forever. I mean, you can come back and go in the graveyard.
Right.
But we're not worried there.
But you don't get to put any mana into X for it, so X is 0.
Exactly. Yeah, Zhang really has to put pressure. This is a really good start. I think Zhang is a little advantage with this board, but it's important to start putting pressure because I really like this block, by the way. Hangerback Walker getting an extra counter is extremely worthwhile. Those 1/1 Fopters have very high value, and Christopher Larson will just be able to add a counter to Hangerback Walker by using its ability. Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. While Spell Queller would prefer to get an XX spell, getting rid of that Steel Overseer is very important. There's not too much, and there's not really removal apart from Walking Ballista. 1 second here.
Here is Collected Company. By the way, I can tell you, speaking of in 1 second here, I can tell you that Kazu Negri up 1 game on Piotr Glogowski.
In free turns?
Probably in 3 turns.
Yeah. Well, yeah, free turn free killer, right? Living up to the potential. This is quite a strong outing for Zhang. I think taking quite control. It's interesting as well to have copied the Spell Queller rather than the Drogskull Captain, but it understands that there's not really a need to give the whole team hexproof twice in this spot.
Well, the nice thing is that sometimes you can give your, you can't then target the Phantasmal Image, which is a copy of the Captain, which means you can't kill it either, but...
Yeah. But it's interesting that it didn't copy the Captain, right? And rather preferred Spell Queller targeting Arcbound Worker. I do wonder there, like, Drogskull Captain being copied would be actually, like, a lot of damage. So I do wonder whether Spell Quellering an Arcbound Worker was the best line here without access to something like an Arcbound Ravager.
In comes the Captain. In comes the 2 Spell Quellers. And he's attacking for 8
damage. Yeah, this is a 2-turn clock. Zhang has a Rattle Chains and I believe another and a Mausoleum Wonder in hand. Mausoleum Wonder, just really a flying man with benefits in this matchup.
Hangerback Walker ticks up to 3 at the end of Zheng's turn.
Christopher Larson really needs a Walking Ballista this turn.
Well, there is Animation Module.
It's a no. Yeah, now the Ingboff Nexus is staying back just to be able to block and avoid lethal damage. Interestingly, with Pendelhaven, Ingboff Nexus can actually eat the Droxkull Captain, so it's not quite that easy here.
All right, here's the Rattle Chains.
Free 2 Flash Flyer with the Captain.
Get a look at Animation Module. See what kind of trickery might be afoot.
Yeah, Christopher Larson really wanted Walking Ballista or Arcbound Ravager. Arcbound Ravager with Hangerback Walker is so sweet as a combo. But yeah, here we're probably going to see the Ingmoth Nexus block one of these creatures. Potentially the Captain. Eating the Captain here is semi-free since the Nexus gets to survive for another turn. But this does put Christopher Larson down to 1. I think Christopher Larson, though, is making the correct line here of blocking Captain, eating it, going to 1, sacrificing Horizon Canopy at the end of turn, and trying to draw into either Walking Ballista or Arcbound Ravager in order to prevent further damage. But with Spell Queller drawn for Zheng, those are no longer outs. Of course, Christopher Larson could draw 2 Arcbound Ravagers. It looks like Walking Ballista and Blinkmoth Nexus. Blinkmoth Nexus also can act as a blocker here. But I think Christopher Larson is probably just going to go for a Walking Ballista for 2 here. Actually, a Walking Ballista for 2 would not would be lethal damage. So that's actually, it kills Rattle Change and Phantasmal Image. So it is an option. But then the Spell Queller would deal lethal damage since there's no mana to activate. So Blinkmoth Nexus plus Inkmoth Nexus may be required here. So we might see a Ballista for 1, but even then there's 2 flyers. This is actually... There's no way to deal with this Hangerback Walker, which is a weird thing to say, right? Killing
Does Animation Module figure into this at all, making an extra...
Can add a counter, but...
Making an extra blocker?
Unfortunately, those servos are ground-based.
Oh, yeah.
So I think Zheng's got this. I don't really see a line for Christopher here. Walking Ballista for 1 or 2 doesn't really do the job. Animation Module costs a lot of mana. I don't think there's an out here. I think this is kind of it. I guess attacking with Hangerback Walker is a weird out, but it's an out. Basically, Christopher Larson is hoping that Zheng blocks here and goes Ballista for 2, pinging the Hangerback Walker to get free Fopters. And that would be the only out. So as long as Zheng doesn't block and also forgets to cast a Spell Queller in hand, Zheng should take this one down.
See the advantage bar all the way to the right for paying Zheng.
Zheng's like, okay, I'll take free. That sounds fine to me.
Goes to 14.
Yeah. It's at least a creative way of trying to get a win, right? Like attacking and hoping for... But yeah, with Spell Queller... There's really not much that can go wrong for Zheng here.
One Phantasmal Image is copying the Spell Queller, the other copying the Reflector Mage, in case you're wondering. And yep, he's going to play Walking Ballista for 1.
Even if this were to resolve, which it seems like it won't.
Yeah, there's another Spell Queller.
Oh, you also had another flyer. Yeah, there's no way.
Yeah, Christopher Larson says, okay. Let's go to the sideboards. Let's see what we can come up with here. And that's where we turn to you, Eduardo.
Sure.
What's the plan here, post-sideboard, for Christopher Larson?
Free Damping Sphere. No to this member. Yes, please. To Grafdigger's Cage. Grafdigger's Cage, a good card against Collected Company, but that's about it. So sometimes you'll get 1 because you can choose to get it with a card like Ancient Stirring. So having access to 1 is actually pretty valuable. You also have Arcbound Ravager. So we might see the card come in. Nature's Claim. There is Worship in Zheng's sideboard, which the Hardened Skills deck can't beat, but it's a... So I don't think you want Nature's Claim. I don't think that's the battle you should be fighting. But I think we're just going to see Christopher Larson mostly stay as is. The Welding Jars being the Welding. I love the Mishra's Bauble Flourish again. The Welding Jars are probably the cards to cut, but there's not much to bring in. You can bring in, say, a Nature's Claim or a Spellskite, worried about what Zheng might bring in, but there's not that much to do here. Maybe there's something like to Dismember as a cage for the free Welding Jars.
Now, what about Peiyun Zhang's list? Here we get a look at it. We see that Worship you mentioned in the sideboard. We see those 2 Knights of Autumn, and that's a card we've seen people getting a lot of good value out of this weekend. And, of course, Stony Silence.
Yeah, Stony Silence 100%. Best card ever for a matchup like this. Rest in Peace, interestingly, doesn't seem like it would be a good card, but it prevents all the modular triggers, and it prevents Hangerback Walker's counters. So maybe Rest in Peace comes in, but not in a huge quantity. Maybe like 1. It doesn't prevent everything, right? So it's okay. Knight of Autumn, as you mentioned, would come in. Dromoka's Command can come in. It kills a Steel Overseer, so usually okay to bring in. Disdainful Stroke, normally not a card I'd have, but with those XX spells, it has a little more value. It's just not a matchup you'd have it here. I would also say the Worship is kind of the tough one because your opponent has Inkmoth Nexus and can make some huge walking ballistas. So while it is a creature-based matchup, I'm not a big fan of Worship. So here I'd say the Knight of Autumns, Dromoka's Command, the Stony Silences, maybe 1 or 2 Rest in Peace. And from the main deck, the Geist of St. Traft is probably going to go away. The Rattle Chains and the Selfless Spirit, pretty nice again in a board-centric matchup, but probably not going to stay in favor of some of these cards.
Now, let me ask you something. You mentioned cards like Stony Silence. You mentioned cards like Rest in Peace. We talked about the possibility of a card like Worship. Suddenly, those Nature's Claims in the sideboard for Christopher Larson start to look a little better once you see something like Stony Silence potentially coming in against you.
Yeah, I think Christopher Larson will end up boarding 2 or 3 Nature's Claims. I'd be surprised if the full 4 come in. And that's probably what we're going to see, because Christopher Larson also wants to kill the Hangerback Walker. And Nature's Claim is a clean way to do so, since Zhang's removal doesn't really kill anything apart from Dromoka's Command. Actually, yeah, Dromoka's Command actually is great. Sorry, I forgot about one important part. Dromoka's Command destroys forces a player to sacrifice an enchantment. There's only 1 enchantment really in Christopher Larson's deck. Well, there's 2. There's Evolutionary Leap, but Hardened Scales is really your target there. And just because of that, Dromoka's Command fighting and killing a Arcbound Worker or Hangerback Walker before it goes out of control, plus losing a Hardened Scales, that could be very key.
Yeah, we have not seen that Evolutionary Leap from Christopher Larson. It's a one of in the deck, but super cool little touch in there.
It'd be extremely powerful in this matchup. Being able to sacrifice Hangerback Walker on command, Arcbound Workers on command, and essentially getting more and more and more creatures against a board-centric matchup makes Evolutionary Leap, in my view, very good. It's good in matchups where you're playing against removal, or in board-centric matchups where you're trying to create an untenable board position for your opponent. I'd say here, as to which deck is favored, we saw the Banned Spirits deck being pretty powerful, but the cards are a little conditional. I think the fact that Zheng decided to play Free Reflector Mage, very key. It's not a typical card in Banned Spirits, and it's a very important card in a matchup like this that is so board-centric. Without it, I think it would have been harder for Zheng to take over. Something like a Path to Exile might have been a little weaker, even just not being it, because then you can Phantasmal Image Reflector Mage. That was a key play we saw
there, yeah.
And that gave, I think, Zheng the edge to have those Reflector Mages in the deck.
Yeah, and that sequencing, right? The turn 1, Aether Vial, it gets up to 2. You spend 3, you play the Reflector Mage, and then you're able to put the Phantasmal Image in off 2 counters. It was a great sequence, and it really just set Larson pretty far back. Oh, he's reaching for it, but he's thinking about it. Oh, that's always... Yeah, easily. All right, no. Okay. Yep. I have to force myself. Once I'm like, oh, I'm going to mulligan, I just kind of want to mulligan. I don't want to... I don't want to talk myself into keeping the hand.
I mean, depends how much of a love of risk you have. There's clearly a correct and an incorrect answer when mulliganing. But sometimes you have to believe in your heart has to be in it.
Yes.
No, honestly, I remember we saw a match where a player missed their first land drop, and I would still defend their mulligan. Just because, I mean, for me, it was Dretch Tag that kept a 6-card hand without a land, and there were 2 Faithless Lootings. I would say, like, it's better to keep that hand than a 5-carder because Faithless Looting is so powerful. Missing the land is a non-issue. If you get there, like, you're super far ahead.
Sure, we all have tendencies, though, that we want to correct for. I think mine is definitely not mulliganing and going, it'll be all right. So
there's a song there, I think. Yeah.
All right, Christopher Larson's going to have to work with 6 cards here. Both players mulligan there. I didn't realize Zhang was mulliganing also.
Dramoka's Command. Aethervial, Rest in Peace, and Knight of Autumn. This is full-on sideboard plans.
He just drew from his sideboard here.
That Aethervial is going to be very key. Christopher Larson has a Nature's Claim. That would actually put quite a favor on him for this match.
So turn 1, Ancient Stirrings for Christopher Larson. Flips through the top 5 cards of his deck. What's the best you can do there? 5 or another forest?
Yeah, the Ancient Stirrings has a fail-safe mode. It's like, well, I didn't really get what I want, but I can get a land. It seems like the land is what Christopher Larson wanted, though, looking at that hand briefly.
There's that turn 1 Aether Vial.
Is this the new, like, forest art? Everything has to match?
All right, another copy of Ancient Stirrings, and that is a Nature's Claim in hand. All right, Peter Glogowski has evened things up, survived past turn 3 in game 2, and they're going to be heading to a game 3.
Yeah, that match is going to be over quickly. Nobody. The Infect versus Ironworks matchup is not one where you're worried it goes to time. But a bit of a slow start for Christopher Larson here.
Keeps an Arcbound Ravager from the Ancient Stirrings, and now I think we're going to see Nature's Claim. Yep, on that Aether Vial.
Very key card here. Zhang was very land light. There was a lot of power, but not many lands. So that Vial being gone is a problem. But then draws a Noble Hierarch and had kept a Horizon Canopy. So probably going to be fine all the same.
And plays both of those cards this turn. And there's the Ravager from Christopher Larson. No third land, though, notably.
Yeah. I think we're going to see a Knight of Autumn. There's not many artifacts that are very easy to kill from the Hardened Scales deck without consequence. So while you do want Knight of Autumn, it's hard sometimes to find the right target. Arcbound Ravager is definitely one of those right targets when it's on its own.
Yeah, you so rarely get a clean shot at a Ravager.
Yeah, normally it just decides to do something else. But yeah, I would be surprised if this Knight of Autumn didn't come down. It's both a 2-1, gets rid of a Ravager at the best possible point. And there's not really much else I would want to play over it. So I think we're going to see the Knight of Autumn unless something more powerful comes along. Zhang could also slam a Rest in Peace, but I think the Knight of Autumn is better here from a tempo standpoint.
Yep, and he does. He's going to just play it as a Tabi Orangutan type effect. There's the animation module. Wow. There's an Arcbound Worker. He pays 1. He makes a servo. Nice turn there from Christopher Larson.
Yeah, imagine if that Ravager was still in play.
Yeah, things might have gotten a little gruesome there.
Yeah. But developed a board, so now we're attacking.
Servo trades with Knight of Autumn. Oh, Christopher may have made a little misstep there. He forgot about the Exalted trigger from the Noble Hierarch.
Yeah, that was, there's not many strategic reasons to not take free here. I guess Christopher might have tried, but I don't think so here. Okay, Arcbound Ravager, Servo. Okay, we need to put an end to this nonsense if you're the Bent Spirits player. This is a lot of potential problem. But with both Rest in Peace and access to Dramoka's Command in hand, there might be... The problem is Ravager is a very good way to fight Dramoka's Command. So Dramoka's Command here, a little less good. So I think here we're going to see something like either 2 of the Spirits to put more of a clock onto Christopher Larson. So I think that's the line I like the most. But with Misty Rainforest, getting a blue source, and then playing both spirits and putting on maximum pressure.
So first things first, going to attack with the Drogskill Captain.
The alternative line is to play a spirit plus something like Rest in Peace, or even keep up the Dromoka's Command. But I think Dromoka's Command here has low value just because, again, of that Arcbound Ravager in play.
So he goes with Mausoleum Wanderer and plays Rest in Peace.
Yeah. Now the Rest in Peace stops the Ravager from moving the counter, so you can't really fight the Ravager, but you could fight something else.
There's a second animation module.
Well, this is going to go deep, because for every servo that Christopher Larson decides to sacrifice, you can pay 2 more mana to get 2. So essentially it becomes something like, sacrifice a servo, get 2, you can pay 1 to get a 1/1 and you get a counter.
Wow. Christopher Larson says, I'm going to attack.
Yeah, most of Zhang's frets fly.
And Zhang's got to do a little head scratching here. He's like, okay, how does this work? This is a very math-intensive deck, Christopher Larson's deck. There was a funny tweet from Adam Bornello who said, I do math for a living, and I don't know if I want to play a deck for 15 rounds that involves me doing complicated math to figure out if my opponent is dead or not.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
I think as a block here, there was a possibility to go something like Knight of Autumn on Arcbound Worker, since the Worker doesn't spread the counters with Rest in Peace. And the Mausoleum Wonder was a 2/2, so it could have blocked the servo, since the counters can't really move around so much. I guess the animation module could, for free mana, add a counter to Arcbound Worker. But, I think Mausoleum Wonder on servo. I guess Zhang was worried about Dismember on the Drogskull Captain and feels ahead. Probably still is ahead a little bit, but taking random damage like this is a good way to give Christopher a chance in this game. So I would have tried to be a little more gun-ho with the blocking, especially with Knight of Autumn. I mean, the Knight of Autumn being in play does have high value just because Phantasmal Image can copy it. But I think when you have Supreme Phantom and Drogskull Captain, your aim should be to kill your opponent as fast as possible.
So Supreme Phantom is a second Spirit Lord here.
Yeah, so now Zhang can attack for 6 here. And you can see the power of this banned spirits list. Just being able to do evasive damage and kill your opponent from in the air very quickly. Yep, Zhang passing with access to Dromoka's Command, and here we see that interaction that was mentioned.
Yep, sacrifices servo, makes 2 servos.
Yep. This can go infinite based on the amount of mana you have, but yeah. You can always spend 1 mana to add a counter. Basically, one colorless mana adds a counter to the Ravager. And if you spend a second colorless, you can get a second servo.
All right. In comes the Ravager again.
As always. Here, let's see. Can you actually take this? You're at Zhang is at 17. This would be 4 artifacts, so up to 7. With the mana, then you can sacrifice Opal 8, 9, 10 for the 2 servos. Arcbound Workers 11. Remember, no modular because of Rest in Peace. 12, 13. So this looks like 13 damage maximum to me. And there's not really much that Christopher Larson can do to make it more, unless there's a Nature's Claim on Rest in Peace, which would be a little more damage, except Christopher would have given Zhang plus 4 life. The attack here definitely correct, but there's not much that Christopher can do to make it bigger.
Content to let Zhang go.
Steel Overseer.
Okay.
But that is good. Like, Dromoka's Command eats that for breakfast. Remember, the Ravager can't really protect the Steel Overseer here.
Okay.
I like sacking the Canopy here, though. You don't really need to do the Dromoka's Command right away, and it can give +1/+1.
So it looks like pretty much all lands in hand there for Zhang.
Plus that Dromoka's
Command.
Command.
And the Dromoka's Command, yeah.
I don't think you can let... I think you can draw a card first. If you get a Spirit Lore that you can cast, such as Drox Skull Captain, there's a chance to have lethal damage, but that Blink Moth Nexus is just sitting around. So, from that point on, you're very incentivized to munch on this Steel Overseer with Dromoka's command. Very incentive. The alternative line is Christopher Larson's at 11, and you're offering 3, 6, 8 damage. So Dromoka's command would make it 9 by eating the Blinkmoth Nexus. So there's not really... I think just attacking here with the Spirits and Dromoka's commanding the Steel Overseer is a fine line. And then, as long as you have a blocker for the Ravager in that Knight of Autumn or Noble Hierarch, there's not really much that Christopher Larson can do for lethal damage, unless a Nature's Claim gets top-decked.
All right, that's the attack.
But I think here you have to Dromoka's command the Steel Overseer. Even something like a Walking Ballista might be an issue. If Christopher has that in hand and then top decks a Nature's Claim, for example. I still think Zeng is advantage here, but it really depends on the last card in Christopher's hand and the top of the deck. Zeng, the damage not dealt here because Zeng is thinking about this Dromoka's command. It's pretty safe to do it on on either the Mausoleum Wonder or the Supreme Phantom, just because they have hexproof from the Drox Skull Captain to munch the Steel Overseer. Obviously, a egregious play would be Nature's Claim, rest in peace, and then like make the Steel Overseer bigger to kill the Supreme Phantom.
It would be pretty amazing.
That would be amazing, but I don't think so. So yeah, sacrifice to Ravager and make 2 tokens is the most likely outcome here.
So Dromoka's command still on the stack. Larson's giving this a good think.
Is this Nate? Wait.
Wow! It is Nature's Claim on the rest in peace.
Wow, just time this.
Things like, well, that did not go remotely how I thought it was going to go.
Yeah, Larson keeping that Nature's Claim just in case to gain 4 life if lethal damage would happen. But this Mausoleum Wonder can just counter this Nature's Claim.
That's right. It's a 3-power creature right now.
Yeah, and I mean, it is a threat, but I think this Nature's Claim would be too powerful here.
Wow. So 3-power. Counter that. Get a counter. Make a servo.
Hangerback Walker. And that rest in peace.
It's just doing work.
This looks like bad alpha. As in, I don't have a choice, so I'm going to alpha strike style alpha. That said, Zeng doesn't exactly have lethal on the crackback thanks to that Blinkmoth Nexus. So Christopher is just aiming to make more servos. I think Zen just about wins the race. Is that Stony Silence?
That is Stony Silence.
This is actually pretty close as to whether you want to cast Drox Skull Captain or Stony Silence. It's not actually that easy. Like, the Stony Silence stops Mox Opal and Ravager's servo army. But Drox Skull Captain, let's see, attacking here, Blinkmoth Nexus is basically forced to block. So at that point, we're preventing free damage anyways, and that would put Christopher Larson down to 2, at which point Christopher would have no flyer. So the Drox Skull Captain actually has not so much value here. It doesn't increase the clock. So I like, unless Christopher draws another Nature's Claim. So I kind of like the Stony Silence here, which I like that Zeng's playing it. It makes sense. You're not accelerating your clock by playing the Drox Skull Captain from your hand. The Stony Silence can help you out here too.
So Larson's like, I fought my way through a couple of enchantments here.
Yeah.
But this last one might be the one that gets him.
Yeah, but Christopher Larsen's played this game very cagily, and I've been actually pretty impressed with how the line's taken in what is a really in a lot of tough situations here. Yeah, so that puts a counter on the Ravager up to 5, and then the Mox Opal might as well be sacrificed. Right, we have 2 servos.
2 servos, yep.
And then you're forced to use the Blink Off Nexus to block or die, so that resolves. Let's see. Zeng's at 10. And there's a Stony Silence, so Walking Ballista isn't going to do the job. So if you attack here with both flyers, Arcbound Ravager attacks. You block with Knight of Autumn. You take 6, going down to 4. And then win on the crackback. So, and by attacking with both flyers, this member is no longer an out, and I don't think that Christopher Larsen essentially has any outs from that point. I don't think there's a card. I'm looking, but I don't think there's a card in the deck that would save Christopher at that point between Rest in Peace and Stony Silence. I think Zen...
He'd buy himself a turn Nature's Claiming one of his own artifacts.
In that scenario, if Christopher Larsen drew one of the remaining 2 Nature's Claims, assuming they were boarded in, you Nature's Claim a servo, and then Zeng still has a Droxel Captain to block, but you took a lot of damage. You're right. A Nature's Claim from Larsen might be just enough. But that's it. There's only 2 outs. That's an Ingboff Nexus. I don't think that's good enough.
Christopher Larsen's at 2 here.
Yeah, attack with everything is not going to really do it. There's no other flyer. I think Zen's got this. Without a Nature's... Top decking one of the last 2 Nature's Claim would have been a sick moment.
And then not using it on his opponent's enchantments.
Yeah, well... I mean, to be fair, the Ravager would be killed anyways. Well, wouldn't be... would be blocked anyway, so it doesn't... Yeah, it takes 5 damage. Interestingly, not attacking with the Arcbound Worker in this spot for some reason. Yeah, all these cards are exiled. Interestingly, this is also one of the few matchups where Rest in Peace is at its best, not because it exiles permanents, but because it's a replacement effect making permanents not go to the graveyard.
All right, here's the Inkmoth Nexus.
I mean, Zeng's going to go for it. Zeng can't win against this board. So Zeng's just going to have to go for it. There's not really much of an answer. Zeng might be worried about a Nature's Claim here, but this you have to go for it. Like, next turn, what are you going to do? Your opponent's going to attack with Arcbound Ravager and 5 1/1s? Especially when you're at 4. You got to go.
Yeah. Zeng goes to 4 here from his Flooded Strand.
So the advantage bar here assumes that Zeng would attack, but I would say 95% plus, 99%. Especially with Spell Queller.
Yeah, Spell Queller back up here.
Yeah, this is a very easy attack. Spell Queller means that nothing can go wrong. Zeng attacks with both, and that's going to be the game and match. Yep, damage.
Fakes the Nature's Claim. Extends the hand. He gets to take off the 2-tight jersey, give it back to his teammate. And Pei-Yun Zhang is through to the finals here with Bant Spirits over Hardened Scales.
Yeah, I mean, that was a really interesting board-centric match to watch for me. Like,
yeah.
A lot of really tight plays, difficult situations. I really like how Christopher Larsen navigated it. I thought it was a good run, and yeah, his teammates clapping him for the run. Even though,
and then you see the good sportsmanship there from Christopher Larsen. Extends the hand again. Big smile. And we are here in time. Uh-oh.
Okay.
The telltale
how
markers of victory here.
How?
When Peter gets out his lands at say mana and starts sacrificing things and starts tracking his mana, things are not going well for the opponent.
This is unbelievable.
And this is something you said this was a matchup that was super favorable for Kazu Negri.
Extremely, yes. And there's a side, but no blue mana. That Terrarian coming into play tapped is actually kind of a drawback. And that's it.
Wow.
Because that's the loop.
Shows him the Mirror Retriever. Kazu Negri says, good games. Peter Glogowski on to the finals with Ironworks Combo. To me, Ironworks Combo versus Bant Spirits.
Yeah.
What do you think about how that match plays out, Eduardo?
Well, those Reflector Mages that were very good against Christopher Larson become much worse. But then again, Path to Exile wasn't exactly good in the first place, so they're better. I would say it's a relatively close matchup. The Spellqueller is really the key card when you're going to be looking at it, because Spellqueller in that matchup, it's not just about disruption. You can't play cards like you would see from humans. It's also, you spend 4 mana to do this thing, I'm going to take it away. So it counters not just the play, it counters the whole turn while putting pressure. So Bant Spirits definitely has the tools to take down the Ironworks combo. And with Stony Silence, Rest in Peace, I think Zhang will be, favored.
Yeah, we certainly saw after sideboard, he really can wreak havoc on an artifact-based deck, which is certainly what the Ironworks deck is doing. Okay, so we've got a finals on the way for you. Don't go anywhere. We got a couple brief messages. Marshall and the Hall of Famer will be back here, and they will bring you all the action the rest of the way.